All right, it's time for the morning trade, and we take a look at AMD, which is set to report its earnings after the close today. Vadas is sitting here with me at the desk, taking a look at AMD, which right now is down just fractionally. Good morning,
Yeah,
Sam.
pretty much flat, just sort of flip-flopping between these sort of marginal gains and losses this morning as we await this very important report card. And the way I heard this characterized this morning ahead of this earnings is that we want to see whether AMD can prove that it is more than just playing second fiddle to NVIDIA as far as the perceived little brother is concerned. But as you can see, the stock has had a pretty good run of late. We're up about 46% or so year to date. It really has been an outperformer in this sector. So let me run you through the numbers as far as what the estimates are on the street today. So for Q2 earnings, we're expecting EPS of 47 cents on revenues of $7.41 billion. If we break it down as far as segment revenue estimates, data centers are expected to rake in $3.31 billion. That would be up 17%. Client $2.53 billion, up 69%. So the expectations are for the company to see rising sales, but profits coming off a bit. Revenue is expected to be up very much on those strong data center sales. Remembering that AMD did warn earlier this year that it would perhaps take a bit of a hit from those chip export controls. However, it does seem that the company has very much been communicating the fact that things might be easing up now. Remember, we got that positive headline out of China that chips will be able to go back there, leading that several analysts to actually raise their price targets, certainly on this stock. Price targets are ranging right now between 111 or so to 210. We're at 177 and change right now. So that is implying a bit of downside, bit of upside for this. The questions that the market very much have as we look ahead to this earnings report now is how is it benefiting this company from the artificial intelligence arms race? That's been the big one for all of these companies. Whether it's enough also to justify this rally. As I mentioned, it's really outperformed more so than NVIDIA. So can it prove itself as to whether it, obviously warrants what we're seeing here as far as the price action is concerned? I've seen that one portfolio manager over at Allspring Global Investments is saying that in order for this stock to keep the momentum, it really needs to show that it is positioned well in the AI infrastructure space as well, because this is about the broader ecosystem, and also those analysts do want to see it to continue to outperform the broader market. So they are realizing, in their words, that the pond is big enough than for just one fish. But as far as what we've learned so far from the earnings picture, Nicole, and the season, is that the CapEx commitments are also there. So no doubt that offers a bit of a tailwind for the AMDs of the world as well. I mean, when you talk about the eye-watering numbers that the Microsofts and the Metas are throwing out there.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have these names under the microscope: NVIDIA, Broadcom, Marvell. You're talking about AMD, Taiwan Semi. The tariffs are always sort of in our minds when it comes to these names in the semi sector. But really, AMD has hit records, and the stock went up to $182.50 just recently, new high there. So everybody will be listening. What will Lisa Su say? And that can really keep it, because people are big fans of hers. I mean, there's no doubt for her leadership.
Yeah, I was listening to a Bernstein analyst also this morning who was sort of talking about the real story for AMD right now and what we're likely to hear from Lisa Su. They believe that the real story is a next year story, particularly when you look at the MI 450, which will, as far as the market is concerned, make them a little bit more competitive with the likes of NVIDIA. So they say we have time to keep dreaming for now. But I mean, what have we learned from the group so far, Nicole? I think that's really the big question. To this Bernstein analyst's point, we are seeing a bit of bifurcation. I mean, you and I have sat here morning after morning talking about some of these other semiconductor companies. I mean, we were talking about onsemi yesterday, and it seems that coming in line with earnings as far as the numbers are concerned is still just not good enough. I mean, we were also talking about NXPI, remember, a couple of weeks ago too. I mean, when you've got the exposure to the infrastructure and the auto sector, that seems to be a little bit of a worry, but it very much is the AI story that is propelling some of these names, particularly when you're Still waiting for NVIDIA, obviously, the big one, which we're not going to get for a few weeks.
Exactly. I mean, AMD, such a big story. I think you called it the little sibling or something.
Yeah.
And just a clarification, I did pull up a longer chart. The 227 seems to be the highest point in the last 3 years, last March of last year, but certainly has had an incredible run and bounce back like many of these semis since Liberation Day. And we're back to tech. We're back to liking tech overall and having tech lead the way. The AI arms race being a key part of this story. The CapEx spending is there, and that really gives it the propel that it needs.
Absolutely. It really offers that tailwind. And what the earnings season has very much told us and confirmed now, Nicole, is that the AI narrative, the CapEx story is still there. But the big question, I suppose, for the markets, and this is something that I've been asking a couple of the guests on our shows about, is, when do we get to a point when we start to question, show me proof of all that spend? And, a lot of the analysts have been sort of suggesting that it's hard to tell. Because, you have to show that the commitment is there. I mean, everybody is trying to get ahead as far as the AI arms race is concerned. But there will be winners and losers. But I don't think we're quite at a point yet when, those questions are coming to the fore. I think, Wall Street and many traders, investors are being credited with being patient right now with some of the big companies throwing out big numbers at the moment.
It's all about monetization of AI. Great to have the AI arms race, the spending that we're seeing. We see the data centers, we see utilities, but the monetization of AI. And I always keep hearing that it's NVIDIA, Microsoft, Meta, according to the guests. Those are the ones seem to get the story right at this moment. Apple playing catch up. A lot to discuss, but a nice preview there of AMD. So we will wait to hear more on that, Sam Vadas. Thank you. And now it is time for a trade with Tim Biggam, option strategist at Buy Alert. Tell me your trade here. How would you go about looking at this name?
Yeah, absolutely, Nicole. And as you were talking about, little brother has been beating big brother NVIDIA in a big way, at least so far this year, outpacing NVIDIA's very nice gain by well over 10% here. I think the stock will absolutely have to prove it on earnings here. It have to be a big beat to kind of justify this kind of red hot rally we've seen here. So I'm just cautiously looking for a pullback of some sorts, not a big one in any way, shape, or form. AMD, believe it or not, has been above the 20-day moving average every day since last earnings report, which is one of the longest stretches in history. So I'm just looking for the stock to kind of act how Microsoft and some of the other big names did, where it's a sell the news sort of scenario here and a slight pullback towards that 20-day moving average, towards the market maker implied downside move of around 7%. It's what the options are saying. So I'm just going out buying next week's slightly out of the money 160 put, selling this week's 160 put, paying about 75 cents for that, capturing a very nice term structure vol edge here, selling over 100 IV this week, hedging with under a 70. So, define risk all the way, and really just looking for the stock to maybe give back some of the gains we've seen over the past quarter or so, and maybe at some point come back towards that 20-day moving average. So be interesting to see how AMD reacts to earnings, and then ultimately how NVIDIA, which I think may be the last, big name, obviously, to report, reacts as well.
Right. And look, I was talking about so many of the other names in the group. NVIDIA, obviously, always in focus, the leader of the group, the clear winner, and Jensen Huang's the visionary there. But Lisa Su, certainly a lot to be respected when it comes to AMD. But so many of these other names that have gotten moved around, I would say, some in good ways, some in bad ways when it comes to tariffs. And that has been the wild card of the market overall, though the market is really now trying to shake off the tariff talk and move forward and look more at the AI revolution, look more at the reignition of manufacturing and things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. To quote Alfred E. Newman, for those old enough to remember, what me worry, right, about the tariffs, which not too long ago were the biggest concern in April, early April. Now they're somewhat forgotten about. They will have an effect, certainly not the big effect that everyone was semi freaking out about not too long ago, but they will provide a drag here. Certainly AI is going to continue to build out, but as you were talking about, just how do you monetize this going forward is the real trillion-dollar question, let's call it. Be interesting to see, but AMD valuations now getting stretched like every other stock out there. People are kind of poo-pooing valuations and everything, getting a little blinded by the AI mantra. I think at some point that will come home to roost, and it probably will be after earnings for most of the companies, similar to what we saw in Microsoft, right, where the stock opened up big but ended up pulling back sharply. Same thing I expect out of AMD and all these AI-related names.
Sure, sure. As I look here at the S&P 500 now, we were talking about the resistance levels of 6380. We even have many pros on Wall Street with price targets higher than where we are now, some of which are at 6,600 by the year end. We've seen the S&P 500, let's say, up about 7%. The Mag 7 group up 27%. So 20 points higher. If you weren't part of the tech play and the AI revolution or boom or whatever you want to call it, you missed it. Do you think these 6,600 level targets seem to be doable between now and the end of the year?
Part of me says yes, part of me says no. My old kind of trader mentality says absolutely not. We're looking at the S&P trading at still well over 3 times price to sales, by far the highest level ever, right? So valuations absolutely through the roof here. But we're seeing just continued, kind of grind higher. We finally traded below the 20-day moving average for 1 day on the S&P 500. We're back above it. So it'll be interesting to see here. Is it doable? Yeah. Is it feasible to stay there once we get there? That's really the question I think that's important.
Okay. Look, right now we're at 63.18. Our own Kevin Green talked about the resistance at 63.80. But if you get that Fed rate cut that folks are now counting on, that would be a big deal here if we were to get that in September. And there's more of a likelihood that we'll get that cut now after that jobs report where we saw the revision of the 2 months, 258,000 fewer jobs in the last couple of months. So obviously tepid, as the president described it. We'll leave it there. Tim Biggam of Buy Alerts, thank you so much. It's great to see you.